If you have a company that's growing like rocket fuel, people are always trying to pick off your leadership. If you don't make your leadership feel heard, they're always going to have one ear to the ground.
In 2003, Peter Taunton had a vision to create an affordable, 24/7, results-driven gym experience, challenging the overpriced, impersonal, big box model. That vision became Snap Fitness, now with 2,500 locations in 26 countries.
I'm 22 years old. I'd quit college. I had no plan B. I was just looking for something that I felt I could love. At the time, I was a professional racquetball player, and the job that was thrown in front of me was to turn around this failing health club. I had turned that club from losing $200,000 a year to making about $250,000 a year. Over the next 10 years, I built 7 clubs.
As founder and CEO of Lift Brands, Peter expanded further, building one of the largest wellness franchise organizations in the world. He's been named Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur, and remains dedicated to helping others achieve personal and financial freedom.
With me with Snap Fitness, I took an idea to my first exit, which was 6 years later. So an idea on a legal pad to my first exit 6 years, a company valued at $100 million. That is how fast it can happen. Don't underestimate the value of peace in your life.
Today, we unpack his journey, building a global brand and what it really takes to succeed.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is part of the HubSpot podcast network. HubSpot not only supports the show, but they support entrepreneurs. That's why I'm such a huge fan of HubSpot. And I'm very grateful for HubSpot for supporting the show because they help entrepreneurs. And as a fellow entrepreneur, I know it takes a lot to grow your business, a lot of audience attracting, a lot of sales, a lot of marketing, a lot of lead scoring, a lot of channel management, a lot of content, a lot of long days, late nights, a lot of weekends, a lot of wishing there was an easier way, but there is. With Breeze, this is HubSpot's new collection of AI tools. It's easier than ever for marketers, for entrepreneurs to attract audiences, to increase leads, to score customers, and to close deals fast, which means pretty soon your company will have a lot to celebrate. Visit HubSpot.com/marketers to learn more. Peter, you spent 8 years grinding away at a single gym location before you built your empire. That runs counter to how a lot of people look at entrepreneurship, where they try and fail as fast as possible and sort of move on to the next thing. So growing up, what was the lived experience or the inflection point in your life that allowed you to think that I can stay in this for a long time? I can stick it out. I can sort of persevere. I think that that's a remarkable quality. I think more people should have that quality. Not a lot of people do.
Yeah, you know what? It's I think it's important to understand where I come from. Now, at the time, at that club that you're talking about, I'm 22 years old. I'd quit college. I had no plan B. So I was just looking for something that I felt I could love. At the time, I was a professional racquetball player, and the job that I was that was thrown in front of me was to turn around this failing health club. They paid me $16,000 a year. Now, this is a club that historically had been losing money every year. There was 5 owners, and they said, Peter, $16,000 a year, but here's the punchline: if you could turn this thing around, we'll let you buy us out with the profits. Well, look at me, 22 years old, rocking a mullet, couldn't find my ass with both hands, and I had an opportunity to try to turn around this failing health club. Now, when you have no plan B, and when you grow up, not dirt poor, but when you grow up with less than, you're just looking for opportunity. And I always say opportunity, it doesn't knock, it whispers. So you've got to pay attention to where those opportunities reside. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know at the time that was going to be my springboard to building one of the largest wellness brands in the world. But I leaned in and was determined to turn that club around. And I did it through a number of different things. So for me, the first thing was, how do you stop the bleeding? I always tell people, when you're digging a hole, sometimes the first thing you need to do is stop digging. So I looked at how are we spending money? Why is this business not cash flowing? It was just complacent.
How did you know this stuff at 22?
You know what? I mean, I give a lot of kudos to my father, who put me to work at 8 years old selling popcorn in front of his grocery store, and having a front row seat to watching my dad get in and work at this grocery store. It was a small grocery store in the hometown that I grew up in. But when you see that and you have a front row seat to that, that's now you understand what an honest day's work looks like through the lens of an 8-year-old. My dad would get up at dark. He'd get home at dark. He'd work all day. I mean, you just saw it and you lived it and you breathe it. And if that's all you ever see, then you say, okay, that's what work life looks like. And my dad, he owned his grocery store in this small town of ours, he would share some of the experiences in family conversations, predominantly with my mother or with his friends. But when you're 8 years old, you're listening to everything. You love sitting around those adult conversations and getting little nuggets of gold. I didn't know that I would use some of that, but what my father taught me, and literally in the first exit of my first company, I told my dad, and it was for 47 million, and it was made public in the paper. I don't know why, but my dad called me and he said, "Son, did I read this right? Did you sell your company for 47 million?" And I told him, "Well, Dad, I sold 40% for 47 million." But and then in the same breath, I said, "Hey, Dad, I can never repay you for the work ethic that you taught me from 8 years old. I'm forever indebted to you to give me that character and that fight and that grit." So I don't take that stuff lightly. That's why when I see entrepreneurs out there today that have, and it's one of my favorite words, grit, meaning they're not quitters. Okay. They're not going to cower when things get tough. They're not going to throw in the towel. They're going to step back. They're going to brush themselves off, and they're going to recalculate, recalibrate, and press forward. Those are great qualities.
So, I mean, you picked up a lot of this work ethic from your dad, which I think is actually, it's beautiful that you actually understood that. And the fact that he gave you that opportunity at a young age too. I think that's absolutely beautiful. So at 22, you get this opportunity and you lean in, you just lean in. Okay. So I cut you off before. I'm sorry. I was just curious sort of where that all came from. Because even that, I don't think many people have the balls to jump into that opportunity at 22. That would scare a lot of people. Or maybe they don't even recognize how serious an opportunity that could be as well.
Well, you know what? I will tell you, the first day on the job there, when I came in and I was awarded the opportunity, I'm 22. Just about every employee was older than me. Okay, it was this health club. And some of the people had been there a long time, some of them in their mid-30s, mid-40s. Here comes this guy, 22 years old, and now he's the manager. He's the guy that I'm reporting to, right? So there was, and I walked around this club with a yellow legal pad and a pen, and I'm writing down things that need to be done, okay? And I went to the entire staff and I said, "Look, everybody, we need to show up tomorrow morning, because we're going to give this club a deep clean." The club was filthy. Nobody cared. So we're going to give it a deep clean. Everybody show up. So the next morning I show up, everybody's there. And I'm just getting ready to divide the people into groups to divide and conquer this club. One of the people steps forward, says, "Peter, I have just something to say that we'd like to address before we clean." And I said, "By all means." The lady's name was Barb. She says, "We weren't hired to clean." Okay. Now keep in mind, day one on the job, I'm 22 years old, and it's like a freaking mutiny. Okay. And I'm 22. Now that was a character building moment for me, because I could have said, "Barb, you're exactly right. What was I thinking? Anyone who doesn't want to clean, feel free to go."
And by the way, that's tough when everyone's older than you too.
No question, right? They're not taking me seriously. I could have said that, but instead I looked her in their eye and I said, "Hey, Barb, and you also don't have a job." And I pointed to the door. You could have heard a pin drop. Okay. People knew, holy shit, who is this guy? I mean, literally day one, "Peter, just want you to know, we weren't hired to clean, and you also don't have a job." I mean, that was a pivotal moment. Now, she ended up staying, and I divvied up the jobs. And when it came to the bathrooms, the toilets, I took that. So that sent another message across the bow. It said that it's told everyone, hey, look, this guy, he's not playing, but he's going to get in there and get dirty. And I learned that from my father as well. I mean, my dad at his grocery store, He owned the grocery store. You would see him shoveling the sidewalk, carrying out groceries, working the till, doing the books, stocking the shelves. He did it all. He put himself above nothing. And what that did for him is, you stand back and look at it, you can see it now, that it made all of his employees so committed and dedicated to him because they knew that he was right there for them. All right. And that's great leadership, in my opinion. And I've carried that with me my entire business career, 40 some odd years.
So that's very wise. So you put your foot down, but you're not putting it down from a place of, I'm better than you. You're putting your foot down from the place of, we're all doing this. We're all in this together. We're going to figure this out.
Yeah. Look, it's always a slippery slope. I always say, never let the inmates run the asylum. Okay. And that's true in business. You got to lead. Okay. You can't lead by consensus. That's not leadership. Okay. So you're not always going to be popular. But I tell you what, when things get tough, when shit hits the fan, so to speak, can I be candid, by the way, on this?
Yeah. Really.
Okay. When shit hits the fan, it's like Jack Nicholson. You want me on that wall. Okay. Yeah. You got to have a leader. Okay. Who's not going to cower, who's going to make choices. And depending how big your company gets, you're making decisions for hundreds of families, okay, that are banking on you making the right decision every day because their livelihood is banking on that, right? So leadership is not for the faint of heart, right?
Do you think, because some people listening to this definitely agree, some people probably think that not being top down and having input from the bottom up can also help make great opinions. So, and I think that for some things that's true. I think it is important to have ideas coming from everywhere in the organization. So to balance those sort of two conflicting ideas, so top down versus bottom up, or when should leadership be top down, sort of, it's my way and this is how we're doing it? And when is it time for including all those other ideas to help the company?
I think that's a great question. I think that the culture that you create within your four walls is gonna lend to that. So in my case, I always had an open door policy. Look, and people respected it. I mean, some people say open door policy and then no one ever comes in. But I had an open door policy, meaning if you've got something that you feel like you can't go to your direct report, because I had different divisions within the company. They had a report, and those are the people that would report directly to me. However, I wanted the culture to be in such a way where anyone, even from the office receptionist, that if she's got something weighing heavy on her heart and she wants to talk to me, I always take those conversations. So I think great leadership is also not putting yourself above others. Look, understanding the role that you play, but getting input from people from your team is one thing, but it's another thing altogether to go around the boardroom and say, can I get a show of hands? Okay. Because look, you're banking, what you're doing is you're asking people their opinion on something that, if it's a critical component of the success of the business, they don't have the historical knowledge to know. They don't know what they don't know. And you know what I think that's poor judgment on a CEO's part to get a consensus when potentially 80% of the people in the room have no historical experience to give you substantive
input. And I think that a CEO that defers judgment, because it makes the decision feel more safe.
Right.
It's not all my fault.
Yeah.
If it doesn't go right.
And you know what, when I'm in a board meeting and I want input from my team, I typically am getting it from the department heads whom the decision is going to affect. Okay. So I don't have every division in the company there to participate just so I have a head count, but I have the appropriate people in the room who it's going to be affected. And I'll ask them, I'll go around. I always ask the opinion of people first, because if I give my opinion first, everyone's just going to fall in line.
Yeah.
Okay.
A whole bunch of yes men.
You got it. So I'm going to go around and get that input. And then what I'll typically do is come back. And when I'm asking the question, I already know the answer. Okay. So but I'm wondering for myself, Have I missed anything? Okay. And then after that we go around, I'll say, look, here's what I'm thinking. And then I'll lay my plan out, my strategy out. And if somebody's got something, a nugget that made sense, maybe they're not quite all the way there, I'll turn around and I'll say, hey, Scott, I like what you said there. I like that point. I'm going to try to incorporate that. Let me sleep on that one, but I like where you're going with it. You know what I mean?
I understand. Yeah. You're incorporating. You're still incorporating. You know where you're going, but you also know at the same time, there could be ideas that could add to what you're trying to do.
You got it. And I think when you lead like that, those people, they feel like number one, very important that your department heads, because if you have a company that's growing like rocket fuel, like mine was, people are always trying to pick off your leadership. Okay. Very important. So if you don't make your leadership feel heard, they're always going to have one ear to the ground. Okay. For the opportunity that comes along. So for me, I always tried to keep opportunity in front of my department heads, growth opportunities within my department by acquisition of other brands and things. I wanted my team. And then the other thing that I did with my leadership, I gave them equity in the company, but the equity would only vest on the next liquidity event. Okay. Mm-hmm. You quit the company,
you don't get anything.
You get zip. Okay. Why did I do that? Because turnover, especially in areas like IT, you hire another IT person, you got to bring them in, you got to ramp them up to what you're doing. I mean, it's honestly, in my opinion, when it comes to IT, they're probably 30 days in before they're really pulling deep on the oars.
That could be for a lot of departments. That could be for sales, usually a 90-day ramp. I mean, depending on how fast you move them.
Yeah.
But everything. But yeah, I mean, like IT, I guess, is like mission critical. Like stuff can't get
backbone stuff.
Yeah.
Backbone stuff.
Okay. So we'll go into sort of how you grew Snap, but I want to go back to that first club. So this is your first real business, right? This is the first thing that you're building. How did you turn that around? And then how did it start to turn into something that it,
when I knew
I
had
big?
something.
So what was the thing that it had?
Okay. Well, the first day was a great day because it really set a precedent. Okay. And I said, look, this is all about, I let the staff know we're in the service business. Okay. We're not in the gym business. We're in the service business. So the guest experience is everything. It starts with the cleanliness. Here's what needs to happen. The club needs to be clean. The equipment needs to be in great working order. It doesn't need to be brand new because quite honestly, this membership base is not accustomed to that because we've been using duct tape and bubble gum forever here. So once we get cash flow, then I plan to put that money back into equipment to, anything that we can to give the club a facelift. So it started the guest experience. I said, every person comes in, I want them greeted. So we started with how do we greet them? And I was at that front desk a good part of the day, calling people by name. And so my staff could see it. And literally within 45 days of taking that gym over, I bet I replaced 30-40% of my staff because they weren't willing to lean in. They weren't willing to raise the bar above their ankles. I would say anyone can be an all-star if you set the bar at your ankles. And there's some truth behind that. Look, you got to show up. You got to greet people, call them by name when they're coming in, thank them for coming in when they leave. That's critical because the only thing you're bringing to the party today is your smile and your appreciation for their loyalty to keep their membership. Okay. You're not winning them over by great equipment. All right. So then once I felt like I had that organized, the second thing is, what can I do? We have no money. We have no budget. Keep in mind, the club was losing $200,000 a year. Okay. When I went back to the owners and said, what is my marketing budget? They looked at me, marketing budget. Maybe you didn't hear us. We lose $200,000 a year. We have no cash flow. Okay.
So they're just keeping it alive just on the hopes.
Every year, these guys are kicking in $50,000 each. There's four or five owners, right? So knowing that that's what I'm dealing with, I went around that community and I was the king of barter. All right. I went to a carpet store and I said, look, I don't have money, but I have memberships. I'll give all your employees a membership at my gym in trade for carpet. All right. And when and surprisingly, I mean, I got 10 no's before I got a yes, but I just kept pounding, right? And carpet, paint, plants, you name it. Okay. And when I did the facility, the club was about 40,000 square feet. So it was a mid-sized club, but I started at the front door and I worked my way out the back door because you never got a second chance for a first impression. When people came into that club because this thing was a dive, okay? They come in, they start smelling fresh carpet, fresh paint, plants. I mean, they're going, hey, wait a minute, right? So they knew that there's something different about this guy being me. And the community rallied behind me, okay? I mean, like nothing you've ever seen before. If there was a parade, I was in the parade. I went to every business and gave out free trial memberships. Come try my club. And I was getting high conversions, right? So I had turned that club from losing $200,000 a year to making about $250,000 a year. I turned that club around in about 4 years to where now when you're generating that kind of cash flow, I was throwing it at those owners to get equity, okay? And in 8 years, I had over 51% equity in that business. That's what allowed me to go to a local bank and refinance the business, okay? Once I had the tipping point where I now controlled the business, then I went to a bank, little local bank, Farmers State Bank of all places, okay? They gave me a loan, paid everyone off, and then refinanced it, gave myself a little more cash flow, started investing in equipment, and the rest is history.
So that's a great story. So you grinded it out for 8 years before you were able to do this. But that's what you did was a very strategic play. I think it was a very strategic play. When was the point when you realized that you actually wanted to not only just own this, but you saw a bigger vision? Because some people probably could have just been, okay, well, I'm going to buy out the owners. I'm going to make 200, whatever, I don't know how much the gym was cash flowing. Maybe it's $500,000, maybe it's $1 million, whatever. This is a great business. I'm going to try and get 100% of this, and I'm just going to sort of triple down on this one.
Yeah, I had a great one.
You didn't think that. You're like, I want to copy and paste this as many times as possible. And there's a lot of risk in that too, because just because one works doesn't necessarily mean the next one works, because now you have a whole bunch of other problems you have to solve, and foot traffic and different demographics and different city and different incomes and different all that. So what was the thing that made you want to say, I'm not just happy with this, I want to keep going?
Look, I think the drive, I was ambitious for one. And I thought there was another town that was about 40 minutes from this town that I grew up in, which is where that health club was. And that town didn't have much of a gym at all. And I just thought one day, I'm going to build another club because I had cash flow, and my decision was based on what would it cost me to build that club? Do I have enough cash flow here to cash flow that one? So even if that one doesn't make any money, does it sink the ship? Okay. So I'm playing it ultra conservative. I'm not going in there thinking, okay, I need to do 40 grand a month for this to. No, I said, look, I got to make sure that this thing can cash flow that one in the event this goes sideways. Very conservative. Well, I built that club, and that club performed well. The community embraced it. Now, keep in mind, that was a brand new club, and I didn't put in swimming pools. I didn't put in childcare. I kept it, neat, the bread and butter of what you needed at that time for people to want to buy a membership. And it was successful. And then honestly, over the next 10 years, I built 7 clubs. Okay.
So a little bit less than one a year.
Yeah. And I tell you why I did it. When I built that second club, that club almost immediately cash flowed. Okay. Like literally out of the gate, I was never feeding it. So now I've got 2 businesses that are spinning off cash. I built a third one. Well, lo and behold, same thing. All right. And I'm looking at the markets. I'm putting them in mid-sized markets because less national competition. So my only competition was another locally owned little gym or maybe a YMCA, but not at this time, there wasn't like the Lifetime Fitnesses of the worlds and all these other players. So it worked out for me, right? I did it 7 times, and then I sold that. I was about probably close to 40.
And that was the $47 million.
No, that was literally when I sold those gyms and paid everything off, I had about 3 million in my checkbook.
Oh,
Okay.
so it was a relatively small exit compared to
Totally.
everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So keep
I
in
mean,
mind,
3 million is great, but it's
I'm-
not 47. It's not 200.
no, that's right. And that was my life savings. Okay. It was my life savings. And when I sold that, one of the people that had worked for me was not happy, and he had been with me for about 10 years, was not happy with the group that I had sold the business to.
Was it private equity?
No, just a private individuals,
Okay.
a couple of guys that bought the business, and the culture changed as what that happens, right? Well, and he was talking to me because he just requested, "Hey, Peter, would you ever consider building me a gym? I'll run it. You don't have to be involved with it if you don't want to. And I know you're trying to get out of this and do something else." And he probably asked me 5 or 6 times before I finally gave it consideration, and then I did it. And that was Snap Fitness, and it was at that time those clubs were 2,500 to 3,500 square feet, smaller footprint. And all I did was replicate what was being done in hotels across the country. Keep in mind, you have your room key, you're going in, you work out. Those hotel gyms, they're not staffed. You go in, you grab your workout, you go back to your room, you shower. Well, the same premise. So I always say what I did was I brought something that was under our noses, and I just brought it to the doorsteps of every strip mall and every town across this country. I mean, and I didn't, when I set out to do it, I didn't know that I was going to build thousands of gyms. I didn't know at the time, but I knew that what I built one in an urban market, and the club cash flowed. In 90 days, I sold enough memberships to cash flow the business for the year. I was really, keep in mind, I had 1.5 to 2 employees in the entire gym. Okay. Very low overhead.
Yeah.
So you don't need to sell a lot of memberships to make that work, right?
It's like your rent and your equipment that, yeah.
It was just so easy. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't need to have 500 or 1,000 members here. These things cash flow on 200 memberships. Here's a town of 10,000 people. I can certainly sell 200 people on exercise, right? Well, look, the dogs ate the dog food, right? I put it in an urban market. I sold enough in 90 days. So now I was intrigued by what was happening. I said to this guy again, I'm going to build another one. I built it in a different size town, a mid-sized market. The club performed the same way. The unit level economics fell into place, which is important for any of your listeners out there that are expanding their business. Does your business work in any size market? For me, putting this gym in a mid-sized market, the rent is less, the overhead is less, therefore I need less memberships to cash flow it, right? Did it, same thing happened mid-sized market. Well then, I said, I'm going to put it in a town of 3,500 people. Now, I put it in that town, and that was the first time I was ever thinking about a franchise, because I knew if this works in this town, I can put it across the entire country. All right.
You've hit every market.
I've hit urban, I've hit mid-size. I'm going to put it in this town of 3,500. And I was married at the time. I remember telling my wife, I'm going to put it in this little town. It was Cokato, Minnesota. Population 3,500 people, literally a one-stoplight town. And I said, I'm probably going to lose my ass, but I got to know, right? I put it in there. Well, the rest is history. I mean, it performed just like the others. In that little town, I remember my rent was $1,200 a month, and that included utilities. I mean, it was so bare bones. I needed about 140 memberships to cash flow the business. I had like 400 memberships.
Oh, because there's no other gym in this town either.
Yeah, you got no competition. And what happens is people just get behind it, because now there's suddenly a place where they can go in and exercise.
Yeah, and it probably turns into a little bit of one concept that I love is Starbucks and like the third place so it's like you have your work, you have your home, then you have this other thing that's a little bit communal.
Exactly. Right.
And that's what, for many people, gym is that thing too, because they go all the time. Sometimes they spend too much chatting, whatever. That's not the point.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
They have their friends there.
right.
And
It becomes a little sub community.
Yeah.
The whole gym community.
Yeah.
And look, it worked. It worked out. Now that business, that company today has evolved, 7, 8 times over into what that was. But at that point in time, that business, that model worked. It was no contract, open 24 hours. You belong to one, you belong to them all. So there was no reason for the consumer to say no, which is important. I always talk about in business, you've got to be able to separate yourself from all of the competition. You got to be able to stand on that hill, put your stake in the sand and say, yes, I may be selling exercise, but I'm different and here's why. You got to be able to point that out because the consumer, there's no shortage of gyms. You've got to convince the consumer that the product that you're bringing forth is a better opportunity than what they're currently doing. And for me, no contract. Look, when I did it, when I started no contract, everybody else was trying to shackle you to a 12 or 18-month contract. I was no contract. And that's why when people would come into my gym, I would tell them, look, you've got everything you need here to get fit. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You belong to one, you belong to them all, but only if you only use this one. It's still, understand, let's say that you try this. You do it for 30 days. If I didn't deliver on my promise, what's the worst thing can happen? They look at me like it's a trick question. And I just tell them, no, you just quit. You just quit. I mean, if I can't earn your business, earn your trust and maintain, if I can't continue to deliver value, I don't deserve your loyalty. And that just resonated with the consumer. And I think today that mindset still resonates. People like that old-fashioned, I'm going to earn your business, I'm going to earn your trust. You know, here we are in Miami. Okay, look, you can go into just about any place, order something, takeout, and they put an 18% gratuity on it.
Yeah.
Which drives me crazy.
It does me too, yeah.
You know what? And it's not about the money, it's about the principle of it. I always say if I'm standing, I shouldn't have to tip. Meaning if I'm going in and I order something and you automatically throw a gratuity on it, that to me is bullshit.
Okay, they didn't do any service.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I came in, so I've always had an issue with that.
But but you're right. So the idea is, I think too many businesses get comfortable because either there's no competition or they find a way to lock you into a contract, or they find a way basically to opt out of giving you good service. Right. But the second somebody does, like that competitor is going to eat that other business's lunch every single day. And that's what you did. And I think it's an important idea because now there's more options than ever before. So if anybody doesn't like what you're doing, you can just go somewhere else. And there's actually some restaurants that I don't go to anymore because of that specific reason. Just like there's some gyms that I don't go to. There's some, pick a service that you use. I mean, there's some phone providers that I don't like the way they structure their contracts, so I'll never use them. So yeah, there's more options than ever, which is a good thing. That's capitalism. That's a very good thing. So you have to, if you're going to build a business, act accordingly. You have to fight for your customer every day. And it's not, I don't know why people are upset with that idea. I think it just makes you a stronger business, a stronger entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And you know what? When you're getting into business, and I work with many companies today and they're looking to pivot, and I tell them, look, by doing what we're going to do, understand the market is going to follow you. Okay, the consumer is going to like the value that you bring forth, I promise you. They're going to like what we're doing, and the competition is going to follow. So you better be prepared for that. You're going to win the short battle, but you will not win the long battle unless you out-hustle them in customer service and guest experience, okay? Because people evolve. I mean, they're looking at each other, they're looking at the lay of the land. If the competition doesn't pivot to what is now relevant in the eyes of the consumer, they're dead anyway. They're not your competition. You know what I mean? They're going to be, they're dead and they don't even know it yet. Okay. It's just, they're just going to die a slow spiral death because from just attrition. So I think when you're going in the battle of being an entrepreneur, make sure that you're always relevant, always pay attention to what's going on with your competition, not even just local competition, but on a national level. See who's doing what. Okay. Get out there, see who's winning and how they're winning. And then if you have to evolve accordingly, do it. Be out in front of it. Okay. I remember when I had my one gym out in little Wilmer, Minnesota, of all places. I had one gym, but when you're making a couple $100,000 a year profit, I had extra cash. So I would pay instructors from Minneapolis to come out once a month on a Saturday morning, and we would have a guest instructor. Okay. I had this huge aerobic studio, and the people just liked it because it brought the city out to this little town. It gave them another look at what other people are doing in the big city, if you will. Okay.
Yeah.
And they just loved that I did that.
And it's something above and beyond, and it's something no one else is doing. I had a question, and it going back to something that you said a little while ago. So entrepreneurship, people usually associate risk with entrepreneurship. And there is a little bit of risk involved. Obviously, you have to have a little bit of risk. But the way that you sort of walk through how you thought about business ideas and opening up new locations, like you de-risked quite a bit. And you even said like you're actually super risk adverse when it comes to entrepreneurship. So again, it's almost like two conflicting ideas. Entrepreneurs are inherently risky. You found a way to do it with as little risk as possible. So what would be sort of your view on risk and entrepreneurship? How much should somebody take? Maybe they shouldn't take that much. I don't know where the balance is.
It's where you are in your journey. Now, I'll tell you straight away, when I had my very first club, when I was not even doing Snap Fitness yet, I was just my first gym. It was, here's your opportunity, turn around this failing gym. Well, when I was successful there and I was going to build my second location, I had to make sure, look, calculated risk. Yeah, there was risk associated with it, but I had no plan B. Remember, I didn't have this war chest of cash. So you had to be very calculated on how you did it, because the last thing you want to do is get into a lease on a second location. It's not performing. And now all the cash flow you've generated from store number one is getting eaten up by store number two. So for me, I made sure that when I got into that lease, if it didn't work out, I had an exit strategy from the landlord. Where I could limit my risk if I had to. So I was very calculated on how I went about that. Now, as I started generating more and more cash flow, and keep in mind, even when I was experiencing this cash flow, I was not upgrading I upgraded my car, but I didn't upgrade my lifestyle a lot.
You see a lot of entrepreneurs do that?
Yeah, they get crazy. But to me, I was putting everything back into the business because I knew that I would have my day when I could exit and then live a life that I had always wanted to. I wasn't on food stamps, don't get me wrong, but cash was sacred. Okay. So that's a far different scenario. That was what I had to work with. And when I work with companies today who are in that place, they like to swing for the fences. And I'm always pulling them back, reeling them in and saying, look, don't take that risk, because that risk is going to sink the ship if it doesn't work. So I know you feel in your heart that that's 100% no risk, but I'm telling you straight away, there is. Look at COVID. Nobody saw COVID coming, and people just got absolutely blindsided, obliterated from being over-levered in a very downtime. Okay. So all those things is where you're at in your journey. So that, the long answer to your short question is calculated risk depends on how much cash you have in reserve, and never bet the farm. It's fiscally irresponsible to bet the farm, because you don't want to go back to where you started. Okay. That's a hell of a road. Do you know what I mean? And it breaks my heart when I see entrepreneurs, they work their tail off. They have an exit. Now they have 10 million in the bank. They think they have FU money that they can just buy whatever they want, and they're going to want for nothing. And they wake up one day and a few bad investments here, a few bad stocks there. People came out of the woodwork. Can you give me a loan? You know how it works. Pretty soon their 10 million is 6. Okay. And I've worked with people in that scenario before. Had a guy, that very exact scenario. And when I was called to come in and help him, I started peeling back some of his depreciating assets. He had a large boat. I said, let's get rid of the boat. Peter, why do I got to sell the boat? It's bought and paid for. Hey, look, your yacht, it's costing you about 12 grand a month. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is stop your cash flow burn. Right now, every month you're going into a deficit. So if we don't do these things right now, you're going to be, I'm going to be looking at you 2 years from now, and your 6 is now going to be 4.5. And now you're going back to work. Okay. So, it got real for him in a hurry. Now, the good news is he listened. We got rid of some of those depreciating assets for him, and he hunkered down. We got into some things where he's no longer swinging for the fences. He's got good, steady returns on his investments. He's not spending. He's not dipping into his principal anymore. He's spending his passive income, and he's still taking a portion of his passive income and putting it to work for him. Okay. So when you have a down year, you're still growing. Okay.
Yeah, it's smart.
So it absolutely,
And nobody teaches you this stuff, by the way. Like,
No.
just because you're good at building a business doesn't mean you're a good investor. Doesn't mean you're good at anything else except literally what you just did.
Exactly. And now for him, 3 years later, he's probably at about 7.2 million. So he's fighting back the other way. And it's not that bad. And I told him, look, it's not that you can never have a boat again, but why the hell, if you can get a boat and borrow the money at 4 or 5% at the time that he was getting, money was cheap, get a 4 or 5% loan on your boat, and then keep that 1.5 million working for you. You know what I mean? But, live and learn. He learned a great lesson there.
Good that he learned it too, like sooner than later. And even the people that I know that have had exits that are much larger than 10 million, no, assuming that was after tax, but people that have exits in, north of 50 and they buy a boat, they're still finding people to rent it out from them on the weekends or during the week when they're not using it to find a way to get it to pay for itself. I know people that bought a boat and now they charge tickets so people can host events on the boat. Like, the point is, you don't just want to hold all these depreciating assets. And when you sell a company, you don't think through all these ideas yet. You're just like, wow, this is great. I've never had this much money. Nobody in my family has ever had this much money before. Let's see how fast we can spend it.
And it happens. When I have a boat, and it's about a $3.5 million boat that, and I've just told my fiance, look, I'm going to sell the boat. We don't use it. We use it like literally 2 or 3 times a month, 8 months of the year. And it's about 20 grand a month. Okay. Now look, it doesn't matter how much money you have. And to me, that's a struggle that I have. Sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, I say to myself, so that's who you've become. You're that guy now, where you just throw money around like a drunken sailor. Like, you know what I mean? There's so many other more responsible things I can do. I don't need a boat. I thought I wanted, I convinced myself that I wanted a boat. And it's probably from when I was a kid in visualizing, what this lifestyle might look like. But look, buying things that you don't use, just depreciating assets, just to fill your own cup, you've got to get away from that. There's so many better ways to have a boating experience without owning the boat.
I just want to take a quick break and thank the HubSpot Podcast Network for supporting Success Story for the past few years. Now, the HubSpot Podcast Network has other incredible podcasts like My First Million. Now, if you are an entrepreneur or you are ready to turn your entrepreneurial dreams into millions, you have to listen to My First Million. It's a show that is revolutionizing business podcasting. It's hosted by Sam Parr, Sean Purry. This is a HubSpot Podcast Network original. It brings you unfiltered conversations with self-made millionaires who actually tell you how they did it. If you want to learn how Alex Hormozi built his fitness empire, or how Sofia Amoruso turned Nasty Girl into a fashion phenomenon, these aren't just success stories. They're the blueprints for your own journey to the top. Each episode breaks down the exact strategies and hidden opportunities that you can use right now. Don't just dream about your first million. Learn how to make it. Listen to My First Million wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Taylor Brands. Now, here's a wild stat. 60% of Americans dream about starting their own business, but less than 20% actually take the plunge. Now, why is that? Let's face it, building a business feels overwhelming. But what if I told you there's a way to make it simple? This is where Taylor Brands comes in, your complete business building companion. They've turned the intimidating process of starting a business into something you can actually handle. If you need an LLC, done in minutes. If you're trying to protect your personal assets, they've got you covered. They'll hook you up with everything from legal documents to licenses to permits, even a personalized business plan. Plus, their business coaching program will guide you through your crucial first 100 days. And the best part is you get all the tools you need to build your brand, manage your invoices, handle your bookkeeping, basically everything you need to launch with confidence. And there's an exclusive deal for all Success Story podcast listeners. You get 35% off when you visit taylorbrands.com/podcast35. Don't let your business dreams stay dreams. Get started today with Taylor Brands. FreshBooks is supporting today's episode. And if you've ever wondered how successful entrepreneurs stay on top of their finances while growing their business, the answer is FreshBooks. The numbers don't lie. Over 30 million people have chosen FreshBooks, processing more than 60 billion in invoices and saving an incredible 192 hours every year on accounting tasks. Think about it. That's nearly 8 full days you could get back to focus on what really matters: growing your business. FreshBooks is more than just accounting software. It's your all-in-one financial command center. Create professional estimates, track time, automatically bill clients, and capture expenses on the go. Plus, it integrates seamlessly with over 100 business tools you already use, all backed by award-winning customer service. If you're ready to stop drowning in receipts and you're ready to stop chasing down payments, here's what I want you to do. Head over to freshbooks.com to start your 30-day free trial, no credit card required. And for all you Success Story listeners out there, I've got something special. Get an exclusive 60% off for 6 months when you visit freshbooks.com/pricing-offer. Transform your business with FreshBooks today. That's freshbooks.com/pricing-offer for 60% off. I want to speak about how you structured your exit, because we're talking about the stuff you do after your exit, but I think even some of the people that you work with right now. So how you work with people right now, I mean, you're retired, you have a couple other businesses that you run, and we can talk about them. But I mean, a lot of the work that you do is mentorship, advising entrepreneurs, you help them out. And the people that you work with, they are, you said before we, press record, $1 million, $2 million in EBITDA. And that's sort of the sweet spot because there's a lot of opportunity there. They figured out product market fit. Great. They're scaling their business. Great. But one thing that I think people, again, some people think about this, not enough people think about this, is, okay, say everything does work. How do I structure my exit? How do I make sure that I actually get paid? And a couple ideas that I've seen that we can talk about. So you took money off the table before you sold, which I think is impressive. Not everybody does that. How do you negotiate that? Some people raise money and they dilute their company too much as well. And by the time they exit, they actually are not getting that much money. And also, who do you sell to? Do you want to sell to private equity? Do you want to sell to a strategic buyer? Do you want to take the company public? Like, what do you want to do with it? Or do you want it to be a lifestyle business? So a lot of ideas around exit that I think you probably have opinions on. So for sure, let's start with, what should entrepreneurs think about? When should entrepreneurs think about exiting a business? Is it right away? Is it 5 years? Like, what's the thing you teach?
Well, first, look, every company is a little bit different. But if, let's say that they're doing $1 million of EBITDA, which means, when I say that that's my sweet spot, the reason I like that, just for your listening audience, is they've invested, they have some redundancy in their leadership, number one. Number two, they've invested in some IP, some technology. So the backbone of the company, the foundation of the analytical data that they're collecting. So they've made some investments in those areas. The first 5 years or first few years of a business is where all the road rash is. And for me to get involved with a company early on in that, it's so much heavy lifting that for me, if I'm going to do that, I may as well run the company. And I don't want to get back into that. But $1 million, now you've got some surplus cash flow. We can strategically put things in place for it. The first conversations I have with a founder, he's got $1 million of EBITDA. I say, white canvas, blank canvas. What does this look like in 5 years for you? All right. Are you a 5 million EBITDA? Are you 10 million EBITDA? And then I ask them, what's your exit strategy? Because that's the other part of it. Every part of being an entrepreneur, you have to visualize what it is you're going to do. What is the product or service you're bringing to the market? And then how do you grow that business? How do you get trajectory? And then how do you exit, to your point? Am I going to go to the open market with a full-blown bidding process, or am I going to sell it to a strategic? We don't need to worry about that now, but I need to know that this is not a business that you intend to hand down, a generational business, okay? Big difference, all right? Because we don't have to worry about those other things then. All right.
Yeah. Do you have, and outside of generational business that you hand down to kids, and that could be a whole other podcast about succession planning and whatnot. But outside of that, um, what do you have a preference? Is there one that you like better than others? Like if you're like, hey, founder with $1 million EBITDA, this is how I think you should grow this. This is how I think you should position it for exit. These are the things we should start to do now to think through so that we can maybe maximize recurring revenue or maybe maximize value. Like, are there things that you think through?
Yeah, absolutely. I look at every part of the business and then I share with them stories about, for me, starting Snap Fitness, creating an administrative infrastructure, which is legal, accounting, marketing, Salesforce. That's the hub of Lift Brands. Okay. In this hub is all the human capital, IP, technology that is there. And when I saw that I had that, I said, look, I can leverage this across multiple brands. It doesn't matter, which is why you have Snap Fitness, which is why you have 9 Round, you have Fit Stop, you have Fitness on Demand, you have YogaFit, you have all these brands.
That's the core. That's what you got to build.
They all, well, and here's why it's beautiful. If I'm looking at your company and I see that you have all those components and you're doing 5 million of EBITDA, I'm going to pay you on a multiple of your EBITDA. But the day that I buy it, my EBITDA could be 7 because there's so much redundancies that I'm going to eliminate. So, you know, you may say, oh man, Peter, he paid me a 5-time multiple, but the market says 4, but he's overpaying. They don't know that. No, not really, my friend. The day that I buy it, my 5 multiple, you're doing 5 million of EBITDA. Next year, I'm going to do 7, and that's if I don't even grow your business. You got it. I've got redundancies, and so it works out. You can easily do that. So to your point on how do you exit, you got to look at who are the strategic players in your space, and I love it when you have a strategic player, and then the other side of it is it strategic? Is it private equity? And then secondly, what do you want to do? Do you want to sell all of it? Do you want to sell a portion of it? Because your buying audience out there is going to deviate based on how much of your company you want to sell. Like for me, the first time I sold a portion of Snap Fitness, as I told you, 40% for $47 million. All right. That was great for me. The $47 million went right into my personal checkbook. The business was spinning off cash. The company that came on board was private equity. I was doing $5 million of EBITDA, and they valued the company at $100 million. Okay.
You have to explain that.
Because
that's a wild value.
Wide value. And I'll tell you why. Because they looked at it and they said, he has 600 licenses sold. He's got 325 stores open. So his funnel of store opening, it's just a matter of time before his EBITDA grows because he's already sold the licenses. He just hasn't realized the cash from these yet because they haven't opened yet. Okay. They call that embedded EBITDA. Okay. They made the right bet. So I sold them 40% of the company. I got 47 million, doing 5 million of EBITDA. The very next year I did 7.5. In 5 years, I grew that company from 5 million of EBITDA to 20, actually 22. Okay. So we did the second exit. Now the second exit, the company valued at 200 million. Okay. Now I sold about 20% of that for about the same amount as I did the first time. Okay. So now think about it. Now here's an important component for your listeners. In hindsight, I wish I had sold more. Okay. I wish I had sold another 40% and kept 20, because the minute that you hand the keys over to your private equity, because you're no longer a majority shareholder.
Yeah, that was a tipping point.
Yeah. And regardless of what they say, doesn't matter. Doesn't mean shit. Okay. At the end of the day, they're the king. They can control what goes on within the company. They control the direction. They control everything. So for me, in hindsight, I wish I had sold 40% rather than selling another 20%, because I was thinking I'm going to sell 20% for about the same amount as the first tranche. And then I'm going to grow this thing and I'm going to sell my last 40%, I'm going to grow the company from 200 million to 300 or 400 million and then sell it. You start selling 40% of a company
Of course, that.
for 400 million, that's 160 million. It's real money.
So what happened?
So what happened? I sold 20%. The dynamics changed. That company, a year into it, they recapped the company. All right. So they went out, put additional debt against the company. And I said, look, I wouldn't do it because the cost of money was about 8.5%. It was a lot. They put 50 million of additional debt against the company. And I said, if anything goes on here, the company is going to damn near be insolvent because your interest alone on this is over $1 million a month. Okay. So you're going to stress the company out. Well, then what happens? COVID. Okay. COVID came along. And for us, our good fortune, the bank approached us because they had a portfolio full of businesses that were getting completely blindsided. No one saw COVID. I mean, so the bank came to us and said, how bad is it? And they worked with us.
Because they don't want to lose everything either.
They don't want to lose it. And the last thing they want is the keys to a large house.
They gotta run it.
No, they don't want that. So fortunately, they worked with us and the management team that's in there now running the business, they do a great job. They're fighting their way back and they'll get back. They're still not back to the number when I left the company, but which was 7 years ago. But
Do you still own that 40%?
no, now I own 22%.
So you did just sell off just at a lower valuation.
Yeah, what happened is during the COVID piece, part of the deal was they wanted us to put 15 million of cash back on the balance sheet. Okay. So for me, 44% of that is a little over 6 point something million.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, for me to give you 6 million, I have to make 12.
Yeah.
Okay. So I looked at it, and at the time, the direction of the company and everything, I said, look, I don't know that I want to double down. I'm just going to pay the.
You don't own it anymore.
You got it.
You're trusting someone else to do the right thing.
You got it.
And candidly, also, you were not 100% okay with the decision that they made to take on that debt in the first place.
No question.
So you have like some hesitations and reservations around what they're going to do.
I did. And you know what? I gave them 3.2. I own 22% of the company. And look, we'll have an exit here in the next year or two and all is good. But it's not the way that I drew it up originally.
You got to be careful. I think that people also, hindsight's always 20/20. And people forget that just because somebody has a lot of capital and it sounds like they know what they're doing, and sometimes they do, private equity doesn't always know what to do better than the founder. More often than not, they actually don't. I've seen several companies not do so well post-exit in my own life. So,
and you know what? It's to their credit. Look, some of the smartest people I know are in private equity. Yeah. Okay, and the group and my business partners in this, they're smart guys, and they've managed to fight their way out of it. So I applaud them for that. But historically, they tend to want to recap and get their cash off the table. So they OPM other people's money. Okay. So they come in, they grow the business a little bit, and then they want to recap the company and put more debt against the company, which is betting the farm.
but it's a bank's money. So it's not their
Banks. And you know what? When they recap, so think about it. They put 50 million of debt against the company. At that time, I owned 44% of the company. So I'm getting 44% of the 50 million. So here's another tranche of cash that you get. Okay. But it could very well be like during COVID, my equity could have went to zero. You know what I mean? It could have, had the bank not stepped up and said, look, we want to help you fight your way out of this, and they didn't do it for free, but thank God that they were in that mindset, and they had to, because as I said, private equity companies, their portfolios, it was a bloodbath out there. It was really tough.
The first sale, how did you convince them that you wanted to keep majority of the company? Or was that something that they suggested?
No, I was, look, when it's your company, you call the shots, it's your party. So I said it.
Like, were you, so I'll tell you, so said differently, obviously you had a couple different options for investors as well, because some people, especially the first company that they've ever built, they get bullied by the investor.
Yeah. Well, I had no partners. So it was me. I owned 100% of it. So it was me. And I knew what I had. Okay. I knew what I had. And I didn't know at the time that my company was $100 million company. I didn't know. I let private equity tell me, okay, when they went through their valuations, you just show them the numbers. When you're going to run a full process, you put your numbers out there and they will come back to you and say, here's what we think it's worth. Okay. So $100 million valuation. And you know what? They bet right. Yeah. It was a good bet that they made, but that's, but I always knew that I was going to grow it. And my phone was ringing weekly. And what prompted me to want to sell a portion is I wanted to say, look, the first sale that I make, regardless of what history brings after this, it's game over for me. Okay. When you've got 47 million in your checkbook, it's game over. You're done.
Yes, you never have to.
You're done.
Worry about it. Yeah.
You're done. Unless you're spending money like a drunken sailor, but whatnot. But even, 47 million, by the time taxes, Uncle Sam gets his pound of flesh. So call it 30 million of cash working for you. I mean, look, you can spend 2-3 million a year and never touch your money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
high class problems.
It is high class problems. I want to talk about passion versus industry and what matters more. And the reason why I asked is because you've built many different businesses. You've built obviously gyms. You have, if I'm not mistaken, you have a lodge in Tanzania. You built Lyft brands. For a period, you were building it was acai bowls as well. That was a company. So you have all these different companies. I'm assuming they've all achieved some level of success, which is why you're probably talking about them. Because if they weren't working, I'm sure they wouldn't be on the books anymore. But what do you think is more important? Is it passion for an industry, or is there something else that allows you to achieve success across so many different fields?
I think what I'm doing now, the consulting that I'm doing, and what fires you up every day. I'm a firm believer in, I think, number one, I think retirement's overrated.
I agree with that completely.
Yeah. So find something that you have balance, but something that can get you out of bed in the morning that's going to fire you up, whatever it is. And it's not golf and fishing and working out. Okay. It's something that is going to test your brain, test your noodle, force you to interact with people, force you to be calculated in your business to keep you in the game. Okay. I just think you've got to be in the game at whatever that game looks like through your lens of what really lights your fire. So that's what I do. I only get involved in things that I really love or that I can get passionate about. So, the lodge in Africa, it's a good friend of mine and I own it 50-50. We've owned it for about 14 years, and it wasn't easy. It was a lot of grinding, but now we're at a place where it's thriving, and it's a 5-star lodge. It's absolutely beautiful.
But you were passionate about it.
I am. And we have about literally 45,000 acres of in this valley that is just pristine. I mean, when the migration comes through, we have so many local animals that stay there, even through the migration. Imagine it's like this oasis in this valley, running water, beautiful terrain, beautiful habitat for them, where the wildebeests are walking through there, and some of them just go, you know what, I'm just going to crash. I'm just going to stay here because I've got food, I got green prairies, I've got everything I need here, I've got water source. I'm just going to stay here. So we got these local native wildlife there that is just spectacular. So
I love that. And the reason I ask this is because there are some big names in business that they don't care about passion. Yeah. They just find the most commercially viable opportunity, and they do it again and again and again and again. Yeah. And it could be something as boring. I mean, I'll use people get passionate. I won't name names, but people get passionate about money and success. But you have a different point of view. So why do you think that it's important to follow something that you're passionate about versus just finding the best possible business opportunity?
I think having balance is one thing. Getting in and doing the same thing again and again and again. Look, even if you're not passionate, if your passion is making money, then great. But I tell you what, you'll never see a hearse behind a coffin. All right. So make sure that you're checking the boxes. Some of the sacrifices that we all made as entrepreneurs early on, whether it be spending more time with the kids when they were growing up, all of those things. And those are some of the things, honestly, for me, that I struggle with. I could have been a better father. I could have been more present. And when I talk to my kids today, they go, Dad, you were great. I understand that the fruits of my effort are going to create a lifestyle for them long after I'm gone. So that's the fruits of my effort, and I'm happy that I'm able to do that. But if I had it to do over again, I probably would have dialed it back a little bit and been more present.
A little bit more like balance.
I wish so.
Yeah.
But I ran these companies with a level of paranoia, and some of your listening audience won't understand that. But when you grow up with nothing, you're always looking around, waiting for the other shoe to fall, right? You just, how can this be going so good? When do I get blindsided?
Yeah, who's gonna punk me? Like what?
Right. No, exactly. Because I said, how does this journey end? So you have this level of paranoia. And I've always used that paranoia in a way to motivate me to out hustle everyone. Do you know what I mean? Just grit, out hustle, because I had no plan B. And that mindset has served me well through my 40 some odd years of business.
You don't operate from the same place of stress and anxiety now, though, when you start something new.
I don't, but you know what? When I get involved with some companies, I tend to absorb what that CEO is going through, because I've been there, and I try to eliminate the potholes for them, because maybe I've got historical experience and how that story ends, how that narrative ends. So part of what I do is try to help people get on a straighter line to success, eliminating some of the road rash that many of us as entrepreneurs have gone through.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to be said for having that stress and that anxiety fuel you, because I mean, people can be fueled by different things, but sometimes, like, subconsciously, you're just not going to put your all into it.
You know what? You're exactly right. And I can tell you this: there's many companies that I've worked with. There are some companies I've worked with, and they're just great. They just minor tweaks. But there's other companies that I've worked with that have become complacent. They've made a hell of a lot of money. Owners made a hell of a lot of money, but the business is complacent. The owner's complacent. He's not driving the business anymore. He's kind of riding the business, and there's a big difference. And he wakes up one day and he says, hey, wait a minute. Sales are declining, more employee turnover. Why? Because his passion's not there, and passion's contagious, right? And just tell him, look, these things, what we need to do with this business, if you're not going to be in the trenches anymore like you were, that's okay. But we need to have a transition. We need to transition you out of the business. Let's get fresh blood in here who's going to grind and is going to inspire your team. Because when they see sales sliding, everybody's aware of it. Okay. And you don't want people walking around here with this level of paranoia. When are the cuts coming? You don't need to do that, because you've got a viable business here. You're no longer relevant. You haven't changed. And if you don't turn this ship around, we're going to do one of two things. You're going to make a strategic pivot. And sometimes those pivots are so costly, you're better off shutting this business down and reopening it, because the effort it's going to take you to pivot and that whole mindset.
And you also, maybe you don't have that mindset anymore.
You got it.
You have your house, your kids are done college, they're off in their own life. You don't worry about money anymore. Your investments afford you the lifestyle you want. And then it's a conversation of, well, fine, you don't have to do that to yourself. But then my question would be, okay, you bring in fresh blood, but how do you ever get fresh blood, younger talent, to be as motivated as the founder of the business?
To me, I've always found it comes with two things. It comes with equity.
Yeah.
Giving them equity, and give them equity. Equity means opportunity.
If you know what you got at the health club, the first health club.
You got it. So give them equity, but put milestones tied to that equity. because believe me, if you're, you can hire sheep or lions, all right? You hire a lion, he wants to know, where's the bar set? How do I get more? How do I get my equity in the company? How do I do that? You work with the team and then set the whole team up. Set not only this person who's going to be your successor, but inspire the whole leadership team. Put caveats in there, put benchmarks, put these, flags in the ground on milestones. You get to here's what you get. All right. And then the other tough decision with this owner is, look, if you're not going to do this, if you're not going to be involved in the business, that's okay. Then stay in arm's length, because we are where we are today because of you. Don't take that the wrong way. Okay. You're not a bad person, but you're not leaning in anymore. So we are here today. So here's where it's going to be a problem. Seen it happen far too many times. They start getting momentum. The culture changes a bit. They're young and they're fiery and they're growing the business. Well, what happens then? The guy that's been sitting at home, who you just removed, he's sitting a lot like an armchair quarterback, and pretty soon he starts blowing in the ear because he still owns the company, right? It's still his call. And he gets in there and he fucks up the mojo of what you've just turned around, which you got to be careful not to
micromanage, and then that young blood loses all their enthusiasm.
Yeah, because they feel like they're getting undermined. They just when they started to see this thing taking off like the good old days, now you're coming in, you're throwing a wrench. You're starting to apply your old mentality of, it's like COVID. Okay, I just had this discussion. This is like a year ago now, but with COVID forced everyone to work from home. Okay, and the new work environment is from home. I mean, most corporations today, their staff is working part in the office and part at home. Okay, I mean, at Lyft Brands, we probably have 30% of our staff that comes into the office every day. 30%. And if we woke up tomorrow morning and said, look, everybody's got to come back because we're not seeing the mentoring. We're not seeing the culture of the company because there's no more interaction. If we did that, we'd lose half our staff, because the mindset of the generation that's working today, they understand, I'm going to work from home. I don't think a 4-day work week is far away. Okay.
So they're just doing that now. Which country?
Many countries are doing it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think you're going to see, I think a 4-day work week is not far away at all.
But do you think that's because do you think that people value other things outside of career now? I think that's probably a major part.
It's the whole generation.
Yeah.
It's the workforce there. Yeah, it's the whole workforce. They want, balance, lifestyle and money. I mean, today it's the damnedest thing. You'll have somebody that'll quit their job and they say, well, I'm sorry to hear that you're leaving. What are you going to do? Well, I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. When I was a kid, you would never leave your job without something else coming there. You'd never do it.
People that have left the companies that I've worked for and that I've built, it's actually the opposite. They'll be interviewing on their lunch breaks.
No, right.
So they'll start a job before they even quit. Yeah. And they'll be so careful that they never go a week without a paycheck. Now it's just because I also think that there's a lot of factors that affect this. I think that people don't look at home ownership the same way anymore because now it's out of reach for most people. So if I'm not saving up to buy a home, then maybe I'm just worrying about rent. And then I don't need to worry about money as much because I'm never going to be able to afford this anyway. So let me just optimize the lifestyle that I have now. And there's a lot wrapped into that.
Yes.
But I see it too. And then they value other things and they want to travel and they want to work abroad. And COVID kind of enabled it as well.
Yeah. There's a lot out there right now. And some people call it the conspiracy theories out there. But is it Blackstone that's buying up like
all the
real estate
homes? Yeah.
So you got Blackstone coming in, buying up all the real estate. You've got bills going through Congress talking about putting kill switches in cars. And, you see all of this stuff and all of it's really interesting. And, people today are saying, oh, you're just such a conspiracy theorist. But if you look at what people were saying 4 or 5 years ago, today, they were they were all right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't like the idea of government getting involved. I don't like the idea of government being able to control my car, control my bank account, lock everything down. I mean, there's just more and more and more of that.
I know. So I think that also people feel a little bit helpless.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. And if you don't have the financial means to get outside of that ring of control that's there,
Yeah.
I would not want to be working for the man and have government be able to control everything. My bank accounts, my car.
But they already can. I mean, we were talking before we pressed record about what happened in Canada with the truckers that were protesting during COVID, and then Trudeau froze a whole bunch of their bank accounts.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Which is wild. Like that to me seems like a complete abuse of power. You're allowed to protest. You're very much allowed to protest. And then I guess his thought was, well, I can't arrest you for standing outside on a picket line, but this is what I can do. That to me is pretty messed up.
It makes life difficult.
Well, it makes life difficult considering the fact that truckers plus a whole bunch of other people do not have multiple bank accounts with all this money saved for all these emergency rainy day situations. Most people are paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And they don't have multiple bank accounts.
Right.
How many people do you know
Yeah.
who work a W-2 or a 9-to-5 who have 4 bank accounts all full of money?
No, right.
No, it's not how people live.
Right.
So I don't know. There's a lot of conspiracy theory. I think a lot of people feel helpless. I feel like outside of just like control, there's also just this financial hurdle that people feel they can't overcome. I was looking at stats in Toronto, where I'm from, to buy a detached home. I think you have to have, the household income, meaning like it's either both people have to make close to 200 or you have to be making as a combined unit like 3. It's a stupid amount of money to buy a detached home when you think that my dad bought his first house cash when he was like 24 and he didn't have a PhD. It was just, he was a cop at the time. So yeah, affordability shifted. It stresses everybody out. I think a lot of people are like, why am I busting my ass going into an office? Why am I working 70, 80 hours a week for something that I don't even own? And you have this whole apathy towards work. And that's what adds to that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so true.
And to be honest, I mean, I don't run a large company now. I just have the podcast. So it's a pretty tight group that takes care of the show. But it would stress me out hiring a couple hundred or 1,000 employees in 2024.
Right.
And I think it stresses a lot of people out.
For sure.
And
Sure.
maybe you have some words of wisdom to people that are hiring very large teams or hiring at scale. Because I'll tell you a funny story. It's not so funny, but it's reality. I have a friend, he hired a videographer, W-2, so 9-to-5, salaried, got the guy to agree to a salary, whatever, it was 70, 80. I don't know how much he actually, it was like market rate for videographer full-time. Guy signs the contract. First week of work, he's like, I'd actually like to renegotiate. After he signed the contract.
First week,
he's like, I actually want to get paid a little bit more. And he's like, what are you talking about? This isn't, first of all, why didn't you do this before we signed everything and we got all the forms filled out so that to me is symbolic of how people approach work. And it's very different.
Yeah.
I've never even in my life thought to renegotiate a salaried full-time position the week after I get hired.
That's right.
That's insane to me.
Right.
I'll negotiate before I get an offer or while I'm getting the offer, not after I sign. So people just approach work and authority differently.
Completely.
So what do you do about it for an entrepreneur that's trying to figure out how to get like A+ talent around them and to keep them?
I'm a big fan of, look, if you can get away without hiring employees just because of all the employees, I'm a big fan of 1099, independent contractors.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it.
The whole organization.
Well, as much of it, like Nautical Bowls, when I started that company, when I got involved with that company, they had 2 stores. When I left the company, they had 73 stores open, and every one of our employees, they weren't even employees. Every one of them was 1099. Every one of them worked from home, and here's the difference: they all work from home, so there's no office rent. Okay, so think about the lean and mean company. Okay, you had 72 stores open in 3 years. we sold 100 and like, I think I sold 100, about 170 licenses. So 73 open, 170 licenses, well on its way, 3 years into it, no corporate office. So just it spins off a lot of cash. And when it comes to exit that company, whether somebody's going to buy it or you buy someone, it's a perfect company for someone to acquire because they can just step right into it and pick up the revenue. They're not burdened with office rents and contracts and covenants and things of that nature. So,
Okay, so you 1099 all the employees.
and here's what you need to learn. You need to learn that instead of paying people on hours in the chair,
Yeah.
you're paying them on performance. Here's the reality. For us, we have certain things that we wanted our marketing people to do as an example. Here's the things that we need you to do. Here's the posts that you need to make. Here's how you're managing the social media. Here's the creative that you make available to all of our franchisees. So you got all the things that they need to do. Doesn't matter to me. I don't care if you do it from 9 in the morning until 5 at night, or if you do it from midnight until 8 in the morning. I don't care. So part of the criteria of being an independent contractor is you can't create their schedule. You can just create the work description of the work that you want them to do. So you're giving them a contract, and there it is, and it's month to month. So I tell them, look, it's a month to month contract, and it auto renews. So if they want to leave, I'm not. There's no FICO. There's no holidays. Now with my people at Nautical Bulls, I paid for their health insurance. It was part of their 1099. Okay. But I tell them, hey, look, I'm going to pay for your health insurance. You're not an employee. It's my right as an individual. If I want to pay for your health insurance, I can do that. Just like if I wanted to pay for your health insurance. There's nothing stopping me from paying for your health insurance.
Yeah.
So we did that for all of our employees. We paid for it. And at the end of the year with their 1099, that became taxable income for them. They weren't actually paying it, but they were the benefit of having health insurance. Okay.
Understood.
So you can do that today.
Do you find that when you 1099 an employee, are they as motivated as if they were a W-2? Is there anything else you got to think about?
Yeah, because for me, I helped them. Most of the people that we were hiring at Nautical Bulls, as an example, they were young individuals. So I tell them, look, there's things that you can do. Now that you're an independent contractor, there's things that you can do. For instance, you could take a portion, like if you're renting an apartment and you have a den and the den is your office, you could take that square footage of your desk.
You teach them like all the ways to maximize the benefit.
100%. Your laptop computer, we can write that off. Your cell phone bill, portions of it. I get them to a place where they're keeping more of their money. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what they want. They want to keep more of their check.
And honestly, one of the best, well, he was the founder of a company that I worked at. One of the best leaders that I had, what he did is it was a smaller company, about $10 million in revenue. And obviously you don't have enough money in the $10 million company to have pensions for people and stuff like that, even though no one does them anymore. But he would show people how to invest money. And he'd show people about how to put money into like the S&P 500 and look at historical returns and all the different types of funds and index funds. And so he was like financial education. And I'm sure if he had the means, he'd try and find a way to do like our 401k matching, but it was a small company. So it's like, this is what we got. I can teach you how to invest your money out of your paycheck so that you can make, X percent per year. And that's going to be, in his mind, it was more useful than any 401k contributions. Right. And I don't disagree with him. I think that that's something that more leaders, more entrepreneurs, more founders should do for their employees, because that education alone, kind of like what you're doing with this is what you can write off, this is your home office, this is the square footage. That education alone would be huge for people. They understand.
And they can take with it, they can take that information with them anywhere.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, those are the little, and that's part of being a CEO and helping people find their way to the promised land of financial freedom, is sharing with them your firsthand experiences on those type of things. How can you optimize it?
A big thank you to Indeed for supporting Success Story, because hiring people is one of the hardest things you're ever going to have to do as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as somebody who's trying to build a business. It's important to hire well and find the right person, but it takes so much time and it's so labor intensive because, like most entrepreneurs, you have 1,000 things going on, and there's a good chance that you just realized your business needed to hire somebody yesterday. So how can you find that great, amazing, right fit candidate fast? It's easy. Just use Indeed, because you don't have to waste time struggling to get your job posts seen on all these other job sites. If you're using Indeed, you can just use their sponsored jobs to help you stand out and hire fast. Your post jumps right to the top of the page for relevant candidates, so you can reach out to exactly who you're looking for faster, and the results really speak for themselves. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. And you know what I love most about Indeed? It really just makes hiring so fast, because everything is streamlined in one place. No more juggling multiple platforms or waiting weeks for the right candidate. And how fast is Indeed? In the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed, and listeners of Success Story will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Clary. Terms and conditions do apply. Just go to Indeed.com/Clary. A huge thank you to NetSuite for supporting today's episode. Now, what does the future hold for business? If you ask 9 experts, you're going to get 10 answers. Bull market, bear market, inflation up, inflation down. Honestly, at this point, you just need a crystal ball. But until we get one, over 41,000 businesses have found the next best thing. They future-proofed their businesses, their operations with NetSuite by Oracle, which is the #1 cloud ERP. Imagine having your accounting, your financial management, your inventory, your HR, all flowing together in one fluid platform. And here's what makes NetSuite different. It gives you one source of truth for your business. You get the visibility and control to make quick, confident decisions while others are guessing. You're working with real-time data, insights, forecasting. You're basically looking into the future of your business with actionable data, whether your company earns a couple million or even hundreds of millions. NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and helps you grab your biggest opportunities. And speaking of opportunities, they put together the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/Scott Clary. This is the playbook for understanding how to use AI for your business. The guide is free. That is netsuite.com/Scott Clary. A shout out to NordVPN for supporting today's episode. I have to tell you a story. So I was actually in Toronto visiting family last month, and I went to binge some of my favorite Netflix shows. I forgot, and I realized that half of my US shows weren't available in Canada. Super annoying. Flipped on NordVPN. Within seconds, I got access to everything. Now, it's not just about watching shows. What makes NordVPN a game changer? Really just imagine having this personal security guard for your entire digital life. With just one click, you're connected to one of their 7,100 servers across 118 countries. I mainly use it for accessing streaming services when I travel, but I've also saved hundreds on flight bookings by checking prices from different countries. And their new Threat Protection Pro blocks all those endless pop-ups and suspicious links before they even get to me. And what I love most is how simple it is. One account, 10 devices, so laptop, phone, iPad, everything's covered. And the speed, honestly, it's so fast that I forget that I'm even using a VPN. And the best part, I've got a special offer just for Success Story listeners. So head over to nordvpn.com/success. And you'll not only get their best discount, but they'll throw in an extra 4 months on the 2-year plan. And don't worry about commitment, because they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the episode description. Trust me, it's worth checking out, especially if you travel or stream content regularly. That's nordvpn.com/success. I want to just pick your brain on a few last topics about wealth, about achievement, about success. By the way, actually, we went into a lot, but before I sort of pivot, what did we not go into? What did I not ask you about that I should have asked you? What's some other words of wisdom that are top of mind for you right now?
Well, yeah, you know what? I think for your audience, if they're interested in getting into business, is getting into it in the right headspace. I think a lot of times people, they want to be their own boss. They want to get into business, but they don't understand the sacrifice and commitment that comes with it, and the stress, the sleepless nights. You know, those components. A lot of people underestimate the pressures of running a business and meeting payrolls and doing those things. So it's And I think talking about it before they get into it, so they can embrace it, get in the right headspace. That way, when it comes, they can say, you know what, we talked about this. This is what it is. And there's some
Setting the expectation.
you got it. Letting them understand that this is part of the journey. And rather than ducking from it, embrace it, because this is the challenges. And these challenges never go away. Okay. It might come in a different light, a little different circumstance, but it'll come in multiple times throughout your business career, because that's just how being an entrepreneur is. So you have to embrace it and understand it and not freak out about it, not walk around kicking the garbage can and, screaming around the office. That's not productive, right?
Yeah, that's smart. I do like that. The idea of sort of having real conversations about what entrepreneurship is, so that people aren't just like completely surprised when shit hits the fan, because it will.
It will.
Repeatedly.
And I get people too, they can't make it. In fact, in my book, Impossible Hill, I talk about the, preparation. And the first step of any change is making a plan, just thinking about it. Okay. Where one day you wake up and you say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of getting up at 9 o'clock on somebody else's time. I'm whatever your reasoning is. So that's the first step of understanding I got to make a change. Okay, beautiful. Second part is, what do we want to change into? What's our plan? All right, well, we've come to this conclusion. This sucks, and I don't like my life anymore doing this, so I'm going to change. Step one. But then you don't want to step from there to something else that's a little different color, but the same headache, right? So think about what you want to do. But the third step's the most important. And that is, you have to make the jump. And I can't tell you the amount of people that I work with over the years. They do step one, they get to step two, but when it comes to step three, actually making the jump, they don't do it. And they go, Peter, you know what? I just had, man, I had some sleepless nights, and I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't, and and some people say, well, it's God, it's divine intervention. And I listen to them and I say, look, it's not divine intervention. You're apprehensive because you're doing something you've never done before. That's a perfectly normal headspace. Doubt is a dream killer. Okay. You're not. Keep in mind what we talked about here. You're not betting the farm. Okay. You're not betting the farm. You are making a transition, and we have planned for this. We have set money aside for this. So when you transition into this job, this money is here to help offset you as you ramp this up, right? So we kind of have to go through those things, but there's a lot of people, they can never make the jump, and that's okay.
And they just let this apprehension just build up, and then
to the point where they say, well, I'm just not going to do it and then when they make the decision, I'm not going to do it, and they just fall right back in their old space, they come to realize, hey, look, maybe this space isn't so bad, because here's the benefits of it. Yeah. You are 9 to 5, because where you're stepping into, it's not 9 to 5. You own a business, it's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Get your head around that. Oh, come on, Peter, nobody works. Hey, I promise you, it's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It never leaves you. You think about it at night before you go to bed. You think about it first thing in the morning. It's 7 days a week. If you own the business, and if you're going to be a warrior in your business, that's the mindset you got to be, because you can't be a quitter. You got to be a fighter. Okay. And you got to give it whatever it takes, because you're going to have those tough moments. And if you cave every time you have a tough moment, you're never going to win.
I would say that entrepreneurship is probably not for you if you cave every time you have a tough moment.
Yeah. Or you're walking, you can't handle stress. You're crying, you're freaked out. You got to get couch time because you're just a fucking mess. Right. And tell them, look, what you're contriving in the 6 inches between your ears. You understand it's self-fulfilling. You understand that you're in your own head. Okay. What you're visualizing here and what you think is happening out there, it's two different things. What is going to happen out there is only going to be the result if you stay where you're at. You've got to make these changes. There's things that you can do that can offset that can that can deflect some of that risk that coming. You're just freaking out and you're not thinking. You got to start thinking. Do you know what I mean? Play offense. Yeah. Quit playing fucking defense all the time. You got to play some offense. People don't get it.
It's a tough idea for people to wrap their head around because they get too stuck in their own head. I mean, this is why it's important to have mentors, people around you. I mean, even sometimes like Gina, like my better half, when I'm really spiraling, and I've been doing this for a minute, and no one's immune because there'll always be points where shit hits the fan, and you're just like overthinking everything. But having people close to you, whether or not it's wife, girlfriend, advisor, mentor, whatever, having somebody who can just pull you out of that spiral is also helpful. I mean, it's tough to do it yourself. You got to admit it's tough to do it yourself sometimes, but
and just having somebody pull you aside and say, okay, yeah, let's take a deep breath. Let's get out of that thing. So you almost have to remove yourself from it, look at it, and have somebody break it down and say, look, this is what we're dealing with. It's not that. Because we're not going to let it get to there. We're not going to let it get to that point. This is what we have, and here's what we need to do. All right. And it's just having somebody have that moment, that voice of reason from historical experience. They've been there, done it, and you know how the story ends, and you can help them through it. That's what mentoring is all about. And that's an important point for all of your people out there. If they're going to have somebody who's truly a mentor, it's somebody that's truly going to lean in and understand what it is that you're dealing with. You know, sometimes it's easy to take just a broad brush. Oh, well, you need to do this, this, and this. Well, look, you can't do that because it's a very dynamic business world that we live in today with AI and all these great tools that are there. It's a different dynamic. So you got to make sure who's mentoring you, who you're trusting, that they're in and they understand the full context of what it is that you're going through and what's going on within the dynamics of the business. You can't mentor someone in a business if you're not going to get into the business and understand it, because you can't armchair quarterback. What's going to happen is you're only going to see the big things as a mentor. You're only going to see the big things. You're not going to see the granular details. You're not going to see the risk, the hidden risk. Why? Because you didn't do your homework as a mentor. You've been there. You've hit one out of the park. You're not really leaning in. You're just kind of doing that. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I think this is why I have such an issue with people that mentor at scale when they're dealing with like tons of entrepreneurs at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some high level wisdom that you can teach over to 500 different people that are going through your program, but to really make an impact, you do have to be in the weeds.
You got to be there. And
yeah,
it's just like the friend of mine, like I said, my wheelhouse is franchising. Okay. Franchise. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay. I built my career. I built my empire in the fitness space. But look, in 3 years, and I'm not with Nautical Bulls anymore, but in 3 years, I took that from an idea, no franchise locations, to 73 open stores and 170 licenses sold. So
that's all franchise model.
Right. That's all franchising. It doesn't matter if I'm selling fitness or acai bowls. Okay. So franchising is my wheelhouse, but one of the people who now is a very, very good friend of mine, he has a home healthcare monitoring business. And that's not my wheelhouse, but what is my wheelhouse is the block and tackling of creating a business, an entity, from there all the way through the exit. So how do we position it? Do we sell in, and right now his question is, do I sell a portion of the company to take some chips off the table? But he's growing this business so fast. I mean, I just said, look, if it were me, because the first capital that you sell is going to be the most expensive. You know what I mean? And you don't need it. You're spinning off so much cash right now. Take a small loan, use it for whatever you need it for, but he'll exit this business in the next 2 to 3 years, and it'll be literally at least $500 million company. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, but I mean that's where if you're looking for mentors, you don't always need just one either. So you can help somebody with franchising, you can help somebody figuring out exit strategy, you can help somebody with a lot of different things. But if I was going to ask you something outside your wheelhouse, you wouldn't be the right fit either, which is why I don't like the idea of just having one mentor. You should have multiple people that you learn from and listen to. And I think that you shouldn't put any one person on a pedestal either. I think that's a smart idea.
There's 4 of us that we serve on his executive board.
Okay, so right there, you have 4 people that all have their own experience. They're all going to help. Yeah,
You got it. It works, and it works well for him, but he's created a great business.
I love it. You mentioned one thing that I thought was an interesting point. You said when people go on this journey of starting something, there's a couple different reasons as to why they become entrepreneurs. In your opinion, are there some reasons that are valid reasons to become an entrepreneur and other reasons that are not valid reasons to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, the naive one, and it's typically the young person. I'm tired of working for the man. Okay, well, tell me, what does that look like? Well, I don't like that I got to be at a place at a certain time and this and that. So, okay, so you want to be your own boss? Yes, I do. That's exactly what I want to be. Okay. So they don't understand that when you're starting a business, that it's going to be a hell of a lot more work than that 9 to 5 that they had, with so many more. It's not just that you're going to be there working longer hours. It's that you're going to be working for less pay in most cases early on. And so I try to get them into the headspace of it, because it's not, some people just don't think about it. They think I'm going to be my own boss. This is going to be easy. If I want to go on a trip, I go on a trip, fishing, golfing. I'm going to have all this free time. That's the fruits of your effort from your hard work.
It's definitely not when you're in it.
Not when you're in it, and not when you're a startup and you're doing it with grassroots, bootstrapping, old-fashioned way. And that's what I love too. I love involved with companies where they are bootstrapping it. It's not a guy going out, he's going to raise a couple $1 million. He's going to hire a staff. Everybody's getting fat salaries, and he's got a freaking burn rate of, $50,000 a month burn rate. And that's not for me. That's not my guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I want to pull some sort of last pieces of wisdom out of you.
Yeah.
So you grew up watching your dad run a grocery store. What was your version of success back then, and how has it changed to today?
When you grow up with very little, I mean, for me, I'm a Christian, and I remember, look, it's embarrassing, but God, I'm sure, rolls his eyes at me regularly. But what I remember praying to God, hey, God, just let me make $100,000 a year. I will never ask for another thing. Okay. Because that was so much money that I couldn't even imagine it. That if I would make $100,000 a year, I would want for nothing. All right. So that's the naive side of me that, early on, and what does that journey look and feel like? So I was always, being that I didn't have much money, I was always motivated by money. Look, that's the honest truth, embarrassing or not. It was true. I was more.
That was a lot of people's truths too.
I was driven by money, and that was. I get asked often, "Hey, Peter, what are your biggest regrets?" And it's the canned response that I say all the time is, "I wish I would have danced more in my career." And what I mean by that is, I sacrificed so much in that journey because I didn't want to be sloppy at what I was doing. If I was going to be in it, if I was going to be running it, if this was my baby, if I was the face of the brand, I was not going to be sloppy about it. I was always going to show up and give it an honest day's work. And if that meant 7 days a week, 15-hour days, I would do it. So that was how I was raised, and I was a product of that environment. So today, in hindsight, and it's easier for me to take a different perspective today, because I financially, won whatever that looks like. I've won the financial battle, but there's still remnants of that, paranoia that still come in. But I use it to my advantage. I use it to motivate me and to get up and still fight the good fight.
No, I've heard this from a few people. When they get a first big check, they get massive anxiety because they don't want to screw it up. Did you feel that?
I don't, the first big check, it wasn't anxiety, it was excitement, right? It was excitement and a little bit of, disbelief. I knew that I was capable of it. All right. I mean, I can tell you exactly where I was. Literally, I was walking down the fairway of a golf course eh, on the first tee, and my phone rings, and it was my accountants and my attorneys who they just called me to say, "Hey, Peter, the funds have landed in your account." So I said, "Thank you," and I went to my little Wells Fargo app and saw 47 million sitting in my checking account, and my eyes welled up a little bit. Now I was golfing with some buddies, and they knew that it was a big day for me. But that moment of looking at my personal checking account and seeing 47 million in there, it was so overwhelming for me because it was that kid. I was that kid who went to school in a two-room schoolhouse, youngest of seven, quit college. I mean, if I was a stock, you would have shorted me for sure, right? And it was just that validation that I did it. I actually did it, right? So it was an elation, and obviously, a very memorable moment for me. But today, as I sit back and look at that, I appreciate that moment. But then I also reflect that one of the things I'm most proud of is I'm still that kid that went to school in a two-room schoolhouse and grew up in a small town. Yes, I may drive some nice cars and I may live in nice homes, but I'm a blues jean t-shirt kind of guy. I don't need to flex, and I'm the same guy. I try to be humble and kind and generous. Those are qualities that I try to take with me. That's who I hope I'm defined by. I hope that one day when I die, I hope that my friends say that he was there for us when we needed him. He was insightful. He was, considerate and compassionate and passionate about anything he did. Those are the great qualities. It's not some of the bullshit that comes with the tangible things that you acquire.
So your relationship with money, I think you've maintained a pretty healthy relationship with money, like after you've had these massive wins. How do you make sure that your kids have the same relationship with money as you did growing up, where they respect it?
Well, my oldest son is just turned 30 and my daughter's 28, and I would have had a son who would have been 26. But they were, all three of them, they're very compassionate people and normal. They're normal. They're not spoiled little trust fund babies. They're normal.
Are you going to give them anything?
Yes, for sure. And I do right now, because I hope that, I don't want my kids to go through their 20s and 30s like I did, broke. Okay, you know what I mean? It's if I can't do all that I've done financially, if I can't impact my children, and this goes from my children to my ex-wife to my future wife to any of my philanthropic endeavors, if I can't have an impact on the world after all I've been given, what an embarrassment. I mean, I hope that when it's my day at the pearly gates, that God says, "Hey, Peter, well done." Yeah. Not look at all I did for you and look at what little you did for anyone or anything. That would be a miserable and a huge failure in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting how people, I agree with you. I just think it's interesting how people that make a ton of money handle that succession with their kids, because it's not again, these are not things that are taught, right? So you got to figure it out.
No, and you know what? I mean, there are some businesses, a lot of the things that I'm involved with, like I put when I have an exit from any of these companies that I consult for, I put the money to work for me. Okay. But there's other businesses that are there. They're physically there. For instance, the Tasa Lodge in Africa, right? I mean, these are things that my kids are going to inherit, right? And I talked to my oldest son about that, just like some real estate I own, some rental stuff that I own, that these are the things that will come with, and how you manage those things, managing cash flow of properties, rental incomes,
Is there a strategy you have so that your kids don't end up spoiled? Is it making them work? What is it?
Look, they learned early on when they were
No pressure. They're only just watching this. Like,
yeah. When they were 16, I made them go get jobs.
yeah.
So, I mean, because I wanted them to experience getting up, showering, and showing up on time for someone else. Accountability. Okay. Accountability, and then working with sometimes, colorful personalities that aren't necessarily the most rational, right? Because that's the dynamics of the workforce out there, of just people in general. So I wanted them to experience that. But now I'm at a place where, if I have a business that I think my kids can have a positive impact with, I have them get involved, which is a real blessing. I work with my son, in which I love. I love the opportunity to do that. What a blessing. And then my daughter too, she did some work for me at Nautical Bulls, but now she lives in Savannah, and she's just looking for her next thing, but she's fine. She's married, and, great gal, has a great husband.
and has a good head on their shoulders, and that's tough. That's the most important thing.
She has both of them have amazing head on their shoulders, rational, critical thinking skills. They use good judgment, and they're really, really good people.
What would be the advice that you would give somebody who thinks making X amount of money will make them happy?
Look, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, it's the truth. Yeah, that money can't buy you happiness. Look, that is the truth. I will also tell you, if you have an option between money and being poor, take the money. Okay, right? Life is easier when you have money, because it's one box that you can check. And I think people that have money that continue to beat the drum of money can't buy you happiness. Just for me, my personal perspective on it, there's a little bit of bullshit in that. Personally, I just say, look, let's face it. When you have money, you have choices. You have more choices. You get to have choices. The cars you drive, the clothes you wear, where your kids go to school, the house that you live in, the trips you go on. You have choices, okay? And you can insulate yourself from some of the noise that goes on in society today. You can buffer that because you have financial resources to buffer yourself from that nonsense. Some of the bullshit that has gone on the last 4 years, right? Where, it's been crazy town, let's face it.
Yeah. And if you want your kids to go to a good school, or if you want just good role models, if you want like just good energy around your family, you have the opportunity to buy it. It's nice.
You got it. But the other side of it, the anxiety, the pressures, the societal pressure that just people in general have, I mean, that doesn't go away. And, the relationships that you have, the hurt feelings, the pressure that you have on whatever it looks like, and pressure is a mindset. And that a lot of times when I deal with people that have struggled with pressure, it's self-inflicted pressure. So what I try to help them through is, look, the pressure that you're putting on yourself is only from the person you see in the mirror. That's self-inflicted pressure from, you're trying to please somebody, you're trying to you're trying to prove something to your parents maybe, or to yourself. And you can use that in a positive way, but just don't let it beat you down and turn you into something that you're not.
Well, the reason why I ask about relationship with money, and if somebody's thinking, if I make this much money, what will it do for my life? Yeah, it gives you freedom. But one thing that I think people get stuck in, it's almost like a loop where they don't come from money, and then they find a way to make money, but then they can't stop. And then they just keep pursuing things. Any billionaire in the world has a little bit wrong with them, because the amount of stuff you have to subject yourself to get to that point is just ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, you even made a point, $30 million, you never have to work again. For most people, they can't spend the interest that you'd be making off of $30 million in a year, unless you're really trying, right? $2 million a year, $3 million a year, that lifestyle is phenomenal for most people. So I think it's important to understand, money is important. Money buys freedom, but also know your number. And then also know what season of life you're in. Is it the season where you are hustling, working unlimited hours a week? And if it's not that season, then maybe the season is something else. But I think it's better to just understand all of these ideas so that you don't just get stuck working for just working with no relationship, no spouse, no relationship with your kids. Physical health, mental health has gone down the shitter until you die, which is also not good.
Yeah. It's interesting how many people live a life of isolation. And that's an environment that put themselves in. And look, you gotta put them, back out there. And I deal with that. I deal with that a fair amount with people that have, maybe they had a company, they acquired some level of wealth, they changed, now they're divorced, and they're, mid 50s or older, and they feel somewhat isolated. They're out of the game, right? And they don't want to be that guy that's,
Because they put their head down, they built, and they put their head up, and then realize that everybody else has left them.
you got it. Everyone's gone.
Yeah.
Their wife is gone. He's gone. He's checked out. He thinks the grass is greener. He's got money now.
Yeah.
More people are paying attention to him for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And you have to figure out,
And he's
successfully, who's actually paying attention to you authentically, or who's just trying to get something from you.
You see it all the time. And the more you have, the more people, poke at you, and they bide for your time. And it comes with it. You can't let it callous you to the point where you don't open yourself up to people. But it's disheartening when people come up and they're, hey, Peter, I read this, or I saw this about you, great to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And you're having a nice conversation with them and say, look, would you mind looking at this for me? So it's a little different. I thought they were just coming up to be nice, but really there was a real, underneath all of that, there was a kind of a hidden agenda. And I've learned that when people can come up to me and they cite some things that happened in my life, the silver lining that I put in it is, well, at least they did a little homework.
There's probably a pitch coming after that homework, but
They did a little homework. So they didn't just come up and blindside me. They did a little homework on me and my family, or whatever it might be. So I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. I never am offended by people asking,
no?
I don't, I try not to, because I think of what a blessing that someone would want, my opinion, or want me to invest. So I got to spin it that way. Otherwise you become cynical, right?
Yeah. You're very positive. I appreciate that. You're very positive.
I try to be, because I know where I came from, right? And when you don't lose sight of where you came from, you can appreciate the journey that you've been on. You appreciate all the life experiences, the good and the bad, and the hurt, and all of it that comes with success. And then you realize, as you get older, you realize perspective, and that is life. And none of us are safe from it. We're all going to experience life in a different way, and it is what it is. You just got to tuck and roll with some of it.
Yeah. I want people to be able to connect with you and sort of follow along with what you're building next. And if they want to work with you, they can reach out as well. So where should people connect with you? Where do you like to send people? Socials?
I send them right to my Instagram.
It's a good Instagram. You're putting a whole bunch of podcasts up on there too. Following. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just Instagram which is just Peter_Taunton. And that's where people, and if you've got questions or whatnot, that's the place to reach me.
I love it. Is there anything else that you wanted to go into?
No, I think, this is a good interview. There's a lot of meat on the bone here
I know there's a lot. That's why I know.
So just for your people out there, for your entrepreneur audience.
A lot of the audience, they are entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So for your entrepreneurial audience out there, for anyone that's curious about what I do now. So what I do now, as I said, 7 years ago, I stepped down as the CEO of Lift Brands. And one of the first calls I got was from Forbes. I'm a Forbes masterclass instructor. And what that's afforded me to do is people reach out to me when they have companies and they're trying to grow the company. Either they're trying to grow it and they want help with the trajectory, or they're trying to exit, or their sales are flat and they need to pivot, whatever it might be. And for those people that might find value in me sharing my experience and helping them get to the promised land of whatever that exit looks like, to reach out to me. Because I'm not saying that I will commit to you, because as I mentioned to you before we started recording, what I'll do is I'll work with you for a couple of days. I'll understand your business. And if I like it, then I'll get involved with you. And when I get involved with you, I'm committed to you. I'm
You're
committed,
selective in who you.
very selective, and I do it for equity in your company. And I only do it for equity. I don't draw any salary. And the only caveat is if we're going to build your company, because if I'm going to get involved, the goal is to grow your company and to exit. So there's got to be something there that within 5 years, that one of two things need to happen. Either A, you're going to buy me out of my equity because you want to keep your business for your family, or we're going to exit. And if it's the exit, I help you through that process as well, which I've done 3 times.
And by the way, I mean, if somebody has built a large company, they understand this, but I'm just going to put it out there. That's a really good deal.
It's a great deal.
That's a very good deal.
Yeah.
Because most people, like you're retired. You're retired now. I mean, you have investments and whatnot, but you are not an operator in any companies right now.
What? All I do is I mentor and I lay out strategic plans. I mean, even
This is keeping you busy, but this is fun.
I love it. I love talking shop.
Yeah.
That's why I love doing podcasts. I love talking shop, right? And it drives my soon to be wife, it drives her a little crazy because I like getting in the weeds and talking shop with people, you know what I mean? And understanding their business, how they get into it, where's it at today? Where would you like it to be? How are you going to exit the business? You know, those are all fun conversations.
Like to have a 3x exited entrepreneur, built a company well over 9-figure valuation, and to not be drawing an advisor salary is very rare.
Yeah, and here's what I do. I mean, from my
I'll
perspective,
give you context. I think Kevin O'Leary doesn't even talk to you unless you give him 10%.
Yeah.
Kevin O'Leary is like 10% plus. I think there's a retainer in there as well.
yeah,
He's expensive.
yeah, no kidding. But look, from my perspective, you know, the equity that I take in these companies is anywhere from 20 to 30%. But you know, my goal, and it's an easy number, but my goal is to build a company that's $50-100 million company or more. That's my goal. I'm not in it to create a $5 million company. That's not my jam.
Most people, I think, if they're looking to work with you, they're also not in it for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And together we lock arms. Even Nautical Bulls is an example. I grew that company. I put all the infrastructure in place. I grew it, and I loaned the company over $500,000, you know, of working capital. Okay, that's not something I do, but I believed in that company, and
Yeah, I love. Yeah, it's very good. So if people are interested, they can reach out to you. Do you
on Instagram.
Instagram is just DM?
Yeah, just Instagram me and say, hey Peter, I saw your podcast.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk to you about my company, and you know, that's all there is to it.
I gotcha.
They leave me their number and I'll call them. Otherwise, you know, they're trying to email me, and you know, if I like what I see, I'll give them my cell number, and you know,
Okay.
we connect.
Good. I'll ask this as one last sort of like idea that we can sort of chat about quick, because I know that it's sort of something that you focus on a lot. We did not talk about, we probably do a whole other podcast. We didn't talk about franchising. We didn't talk about like growth, sales, marketing. We didn't talk about any like normal stuff, but that's fine. It's for another day. You can come back. You're down the street, so you can come back.
I'm 10 minutes away.
That's easy. That's perfect. But I was going to say just some like last words of wisdom for entrepreneurs. Obviously it is very specific based on what they're building, but general ideas on growth and scaling. What are some things that you'd like to leave people with?
If you have a business that is, and it has nothing to do with how much cash does it cost to get into this business, but if you have a business that is filling a void in society today, and here's what a lot of people need to understand. There's a lot of opportunities out there where you're just going to take something that's right there and you're going to enhance it and make it better. And you can build a business around that. Some people think they have to invent the next paperclip, or, you know what I mean? They got to invent something that's never been seen before. Hey, look, find something that's being embraced. And if you can make it better, that's step number one. Step number two, trajectory. How do you get growth? I'm a big fan of franchising. Why? Think about it. For me, I built thousands of gyms. If I was going to do that privately, I would have had to have several $100 million to do that. Okay. Literally. All right. So that whole journey is a whole other context. For me, franchising, what does that mean? I mean, believe it or not, I started Snap Fitness with about $400,000 cash. Okay. 400,000 cash is what I put in. I built a couple of clubs, leases, whatnot, and built that into a $200 million company with multiple exits along the way. All right. So it can be done. So I tell people, look, franchising is a great venue, is a great vehicle. And you can go from, think about it. With me with Snap Fitness, I took an idea to my first exit, which was 6 years later. So an idea on a legal pad to my first exit, 6 years, a company valued at $100 million. That is how fast it can happen.
That's fast.
It's unbelievable. Okay. And with some of these concepts, that's what you have to do. You're kind of going to get in and get out. All right. Because you get in, you ride that thing, and the goal is to sell it just before their crescendo. Okay. Because everything has a life to it. They all do. Right. And you exit, and you're going to get a premium on that exit because everything that you're showing is up and to the right. So I'm a big fan of franchising.
Finding a way to grow as quick as possible, leverage other people's money, leverage something so that you're not, because you can build a business fast, you can build a business slow, you can build it with lots of friction, as little friction as possible. Just make it easier on yourself.
And you know what, with franchising, there's a huge appetite out there in the general population of people that want to be their own boss. And the reason they want franchising is because it gives them an opportunity to step into a business in a box. So theoretically, if you've done your job right as the franchisor, you've eliminated much of the road rash and hesitation and challenges that come with a startup business. That's the goal, is get into a franchise. And that's my wheelhouse, is creating systems and processes for smooth sales process, real estate process, build out, marketing, customer growth, retention, exit.
Yeah, I love it.
All those things.
That will be a second podcast. We can do that. That'll be a whole thing.
Yeah.
And we can do another one too, where we talk about, we can wrap it into one. We talk about franchise scale growth, talk about some of the problems that you deal with. We do some case studies of the people that you're working with. That'd be fun too.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question I'd like to ask. So you've had an incredible career. We've spoken a little bit about your family as well and your kids, and they're killing it right now, and they're doing quite well. But if you only had the opportunity to pass one lesson onto your kids out of everything that you've ever learned, what would be that lesson? What would be the most important thing you want to leave them with?
Boy, there's so many, but if I only had one thing, I would say, don't underestimate the value of peace in your life. Okay. Don't underestimate the value of that. And so what is peace? Well, that's for each person to decide where they find their peace. But wherever you find your peace, acknowledge where that is and hold it close, because it's easy to get lost in the whole dynamics of being an entrepreneur, assuming that that's your audience. You know, if you're not in business and whatnot, then it's much easier to find your peace and your comfort, right? But when you're in business, there's so many other effects that come into play that can undermine that peace that you're looking for. And you don't want to get to a place where your whole life has been a freaking grind and you have little pockets of peace along the way. Do you know what I mean? So that's from my own, as I look back and reflect, you know, there are times I wish I had held my peace, you know, lantern a little bit closer, but I'm a product of how I grew up. You know what, once again, level of paranoia, came from nothing, and fear of loss all play a part of it. You know, fear of loss is a big part, because when you have it, it's fear of, my gosh, what if this all disappeared tomorrow? Could I adjust and fight my way back? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think that's very wise. I think that being able to just make space for peace in your life, because if a lot of people listen to this are entrepreneurs, they're going to build anything, it'll be very easy to lose that.
For sure. You got to understand where your peace comes from, and it's got to be sacred. It's got to be, you know, I love one of my favorite pastimes is playing golf. Okay. Carve time out to do that. Okay. Because it's unhealthy. Yes, you're going to have some times where you can't do it. You have to shift schedules or whatnot, but find your peace, acknowledge it, and then hold it close.